Let's talk about our next speaker, shall we? Erika Ahern is a seasoned journalist and managing editor for Refine, Catholic Vote's lifestyle newsletter, and co-host of the Loopcast. Her work has appeared in the USA Today, the Washington Examiner, Plow Quarterly, the National Catholic Register, the Catholic Exchange, the Daily Caller, Connecticut Examiner, Crisis Magazine, and Regina Magazine. She is a contributing author and editor of the Catholic Vote's 2024 book for God and Country and Sanity: How Catholics Can Save America. She appears regularly as a guest on podcasts and talk radio, including Newsmax, The Steve Gruber Show, Catholic Connection with Teresa Tomeo, Relevant Radio, and EWTN's Pro Life Weekly. She holds a degree in philosophy from the Catholic University of America and Emory University. She and her husband live outside of New Haven, Connecticut, which we talked about as the pizza capital of the world. And they raised their 7 children. They've homeschooled for somewhere in the ballpark of 17 years. Does pre-K 3 count? Yes, it does, actually. Yes, it
Oh,
does.
thank you. Yes, and 17
Yeah.
it is.
You were worried about it. Now you don't have to. Very good. All right. So without further ado, let's welcome Erika to the platform, if you will, to the podium. Thank you, Erika, for accepting the invitation to speak today.
Well, thank you so much for having me, Walter. And thank you to everyone for sticking around for the final talk of the day. I'll try to keep you all awake with stimulating conversation. So, my talk today is called Homeschooling on Holy Water and Coffee. And I'm going to share with you 5 things that I wish I'd known before I started homeschooling 17 years ago, as Walter confirms for me. It's a little letter from me to my younger self, and maybe yours as well. So here's my context. We have been blessed with 5 daughters. My oldest is going to turn 20. And then we also have 2 sons. One of the sons bringing up the rear. The youngest is about to turn 15 months this coming week. So we have quite the range of children, and we have been homeschooling. I've done it 100% on my own. I've used full curriculum. I've used no curriculum. I've done online classes, hybrid programs, co-ops, like every mix match you can imagine. And it's hard for me to look back and think like we've done all that. We've homeschooled in 4 different states, and I've done it while working full-time, part-time, and every combination in between. So why holy water? Well, because nothing happens without grace, including everything I just listed. And the coffee should be self-explanatory at this point in my talk because it's been a crazy ride. So some of these 5 lessons are what I'd call hard-earned lessons, and others are I wish someone had told me how awesome this homeschooling journey would be. Before we dive in, though, I just wanted to share a little bit about my parenting philosophy. I believe, as the church teaches, and as I've come to realize through blessed experience, that every child is a gift from God, the greatest blessing in our homes. They're all different, so you're never an expert on raising children. Raising great kids is not easy, and we shouldn't make it harder than it has to be. Now, if everything you've seen about homeschooling today or on Pinterest or Instagram, this conference, or you go to like book fairs sounds great, but it all feels like a rainbow unicorn, don't be fooled. It is not a rainbow unicorn. There is no rainbow unicorn. There is just real life. I have no illusions at this point. Homeschooling is hard. Life throws us curveballs and plans get disrupted. We make decisions that seemed great at the time and then they fall apart. And homeschooling does not change that. But I've also seen again and again that life together is half as hard and twice as good. So let's jump in with my first lesson. I wish I'd known. I wish I had known how good I was at long division because I was not a math kid. I liked Euclidean geometry. I discovered I loved geometry in high school, and that's really about it. So when Miriam, my oldest, was 3 years old, and of course she's my first, right? So I'm like, she's advanced. We have to start kindergarten at 3, and so you start. And I was just beginning to homeschool. I was kind of panicking. I spent a lot of time stressing about how am I going to teach exponents or fractions and reciprocals, algebra, when what she really wanted was just snack time and goodnight moon. But there I was, worried and spending my anxieties about derivatives. It turns out You don't need to be an expert to teach your child. You just need to be willing to learn alongside them. And there's a major spoiler alert here. 31-year-old moms pick up on long division a lot faster than 8-year-olds do, and you will be fine. I've learned that being a homeschool mom does not mean I have to be the academic expert. I just have to be the best student in the house, and sometimes not even that. And that's always more than enough. So we survived the family stomach bug every year. I've survived childbirth, and I survived Saxon 5-4. And you will too. You might even thrive at it and discover you're really good at long division. So, number 2, read the parent materials. Watch the video before you start and phone a friend. Homeschooling is a lot like breastfeeding. Those of you moms on the call, I had this idea going into my first baby, right? That, well, breastfeeding is natural, and natural means that it just like comes to you and it's easy. LOL, as the kids say. Sometimes we believe homeschooling should also just come naturally, and that if we need help, we're somehow failing, or we're not being natural with our children, or we're not as good as that homeschool influencer who obviously has it all figured out and it came so easily to her. That's just not true. Like breastfeeding, parenting is a skill, and like parenting, homeschooling is a skill. You are allowed to learn it. And actually, you should see yourself taking time ahead of starting the actual schooling to read through the instructions. If that means starting school a week later than you had planned, to take time to read through the parent guides, just do it. That week of prep will save you 6 months of frustration. And in a previous career, I reviewed and wrote classical curriculum professionally for almost 12 years. And I still forget to do this. Just last year, I was floundering with a new program. I was using classical academic presses, writing and rhetoric, which I loved. I highly recommend it. But I just kind of like got the workbooks and I was like, oh, week 1, day 1, here you go, kids, let's start. And I got really frustrated. The kids got frustrated. I didn't understand the working of the program. So I paused. I took a week and sat down and I read the instructions. And guess what? The program's great. It made all kinds of sense. So we dove back in and it was much better. So if you feel like you're in too deep and you didn't have time to get your feet under you before pitching it to the kids, just take a deep breath. And if you need to, phone a friend. This happened to me as well. I'd been using Saxon Math forever. But I had the great advantage of starting out homeschooling with a hybrid academy where the kids went to school 2 days a week. They got all their Saxon Math instruction in the class. The tests were graded by the teacher. And I was like, Saxon Math is great. This is easy. What's everyone complaining about? And then through COVID, we very abruptly lost that hybrid school support that I was enjoying. But and I just was like, "Well, this is what everyone's complaining about." I suddenly realized what had been going on. So when we lost that support, it hit me like a ton of bricks. And for about 6 months, I struggled through. I thought about giving up, but I really loved Saxon. It had been so fruitful for my children, even though now we were kind of drowning in it. So I finally picked up the phone and I called a friend who'd never had hybrid support, but had managed somehow to do Saxon all the way through high school. I was like, how did you do it? And she's like, oh, have you ever heard of Nicole the math lady? And it was a game changer, all because I finally was driven to my knees in humility and I picked up the phone. So that was lesson number 2. Take the time to read the instruction manual. And if you need to do it, pause the school year until you feel like you have your feet under you. Always phone the friend. Number 3, this is a big one for, I think, anyone who's like a type A mom, sometimes not so much for type B, so you guys can take a nap while I talk about this one, but this is avoid overcommitment. Seriously. The unsocialized homeschooler myth is a complete joke. If anything, honestly, at this point, we risk the opposite problem, right? Being so busy that we forget to actually school, right? And in those giddy, adrenaline powered days before each academic year, maybe it's like mid August for you or September, if you live up north like me, we have that tendency to sign up for everything. We're like, this year I'm going to do the co op and I'm going to teach religious ed at the parish and we're going to do fall sports, music lessons, 2 foreign languages, homeschool museum days, educational lectures. It's going to be amazing. And for my high school kids, because homeschoolers are in high demand, they will have part time jobs as well. There is so much opportunity for homeschoolers of every social and economic class simply because we have more flex time, and it's awesome. But that opportunity can also quickly turn into life in noisy chaos. And the primary pitfall of home education often is to focus more on the doing and the adding subjects and getting it all done than the actual being of homeschooling. I fell into this trap many, many times. I seem to forget it about every 3 years, and I have to learn it again the hard way. This quote from Stratford Caldecott, some of you might have heard of him. He was a great thinker of the 20th century and wrote very beautifully about classical education. If you've never read him, highly recommend Stratford Caldecott. This is a great quote of his that I keep by my desk where I can look at it when I'm tempted to buy more curriculum. He wrote, quote, "Education is not primarily about the acquisition of information. It is not even about the acquisition of skills in the conventional sense to equip us for particular roles in society. It is about how we become more human and therefore more free in the truest sense of that word. This is a broader and a deeper question, but no less practical. Too often, we have not been educating our humanity. We have been educating ourselves for doing rather than for being." So, the bottom line of this lesson for me, being busy doesn't make me holy. Completing 32 weeks of all 13 academic subjects that I started the year with does not guarantee that my kids will be smart or even very pleasant to live with. Education is not about information, it's about becoming more human. Which leads me to the fourth lesson that I have learned through 17 years, and another lesson that because I am a forgetful and obstinate sheep of the Lord, I have to relearn every couple of years. This has been a great exercise for me, by the way, as I'm like planning curriculum for the next year. Number four, there is no perfect curriculum, and that is a very good thing. One of the best things about homeschooling is the freedom that we have to choose what works for our family. One of the hardest challenges that we face as homeschooling parents is that we have so many choices. And so we fall into the trap of constantly switching and searching for perfection in greener fields and far off pastures. But here's the truth: there is no perfect book, there is no perfect math program or perfect system. There are very many good ones. So I would say pick one and stick with it, give it time. The temptation to switch curriculums and switch programs is an annual pattern in many homeschools. In about February or March every year, for me anyway, doubt and burnout creep in. And I see Instagram moms saying that her son Johnny loves math now because of curriculum XYZ. And then the curriculums start to roll in from Catholic Heritage and Memoria Press, which has a beautiful catalog, very seductive. And then you see all the glossy pictures. You're like, ooh, that looks very well planned out. Maybe that would fix it. Or you even like look out the window and you see your neighbor's kids going off to school and you're like, we could just do a year of that. That would be very restful for me. But all those thoughts are normal, but growth doesn't always mean switching products or abandoning homeschooling or switching curriculums. Um, Too often, talking to homeschooling parents and myself throughout the years, I see doing better get confused with getting something new. So your child struggles with Saxon, so you switch to Singapore, and then you switch to Abeka, and the next year you're overwhelmed, and so you just grab the box set from Seton, and suddenly your child has had 4 different math programs in 4 years. And you have had to learn 4 different teaching styles for math and track the gaps and constantly adapt. Each change may have seemed like the right call in the moment you made it, but taken all together, the pattern created an inconsistency for your child and also helped to burn you out each year. So I would say I've learned that consistency is a gift and it requires virtue, not just something that we put up with, but a real good that children thrive on. Switching every year rarely solves deep issues in your homeschool, and it often causes more. It is hard for kids to build confidence in subjects when the terms and the methods and the expectations are constantly shifting every 1 or 2 years. It's also hard for parents to teach well when they're always starting from scratch. That doesn't mean that you never switch. So there's this both and in Catholicism, right? There's like body and soul. There's, divine and human, Jesus Christ. In the homeschool, there's both consistency and flexibility. And this is an acknowledgement life happens. Maybe you need to return to work after some time. Maybe you are dealing with a health crisis, or you're simply having a major life change, like a baby or moving or what have you. And those are all valid and important reasons to reevaluate where you're at and what you're using in your homeschool. But avoid switching just because something shinier caught your eye. Education is not about the perfect program. It is about relationship and wonder and time spent seeking the good, the true, and the beautiful together through your child's young life. Now, curriculum can support that, and some do that better than others, but they can't replace it, and they can't ever completely mess it up either. So don't let the illusion of someone else's perfect day derail the beautiful, messy, grace-filled day that you just had and the life that you are trying to build in your home. Which brings me to my fifth and final point. I actually wrote this in the airport this morning because I had one and I was like, it's just not as important. I think this is really important to remember, especially as you're at a homeschool conference. You want to do well, and it seems like there's so much planning to do, especially if you're new to homeschooling. But it's this: put first things first. One of my favorite mommy bloggers, and yes, there are still such things, although now they're mommy substackers, I think is what we're called, or podcasters or something. But back in the day, the mommy blogs, Auntie Lila at a blog called Like Mother, Like Daughter. It is still up. You can still go to the website. I would look it up. She gets this one, first things first, really, really well. And as a mom who was homeschooling long before it was cool, she helped me as a young mom back in the early 2000s to put schooling my kids in the right order in our home life and in building our domestic church. And so here's the order, if you will, that she proposes. Number 1, Jesus Christ. No surprise. Probably every speaker has said this today. You probably say this to yourself every day. But for moms, I think it's important, especially, and dads too, to have a set time to pray every single day and a commitment of what you will pray during that time, like the rosary, divine office, even just doing the daily mass readings. I also have what I call a set call to prayer in the back of my head. And no, I'm not a Muslim convert, not like going over the fence or going crazy here, but we need a call to prayer as mom. Why? Because our set time to pray is constantly being blown up and blown out of the water. And that plan that we had to be with God can be really frustrating, right? Especially when I've been through postpartum 7 times now. Those first 4 or 5 months, there's very little regularity in my morning, in my evening. So it was becoming frustrating. But then I tried to switch it to think of it as a set call to prayer. So that means I know I'm going to be getting in the car on most days at some point. We get in the car, the babies are strapped down, and the older kids know we're just going to pray for a few minutes. Or if I have a reading child in the car with me, they can read the daily readings aloud. Even if it's a 10-minute drive, at least we had a set call to prayer. That's the car engine turning on should be my call to prayer. Something like dinner prep as well. If there's a way that I can do vocal prayer during that time, just to get me through those seasons of life when the set time to pray and check in with God is blown out of the water a little bit. But then, when the baby's a little older, have a little more regularity, make sure you get back to that set time. So first things first, Christ. Second, the home. So Auntie Lila says, start with your meal plan, your laundry, and a reasonably clean house, not a Pinterest ready house by any stretch of the imagination, but just like reasonably clean so you're not wallowing in filth. Whatever that means to you, you could like walk through a room and not cringe and have your brain distracted, just a little bit at a time. If you want to look over at Refine is our new lifestyle newsletter with Catholic Vote. I try and put a lot of articles in there about different decluttering methods that are doable for very busy moms. But Auntie Lila says the home actually needs to come in just like basic material necessities, food, clothing, and being able to walk through a room without stepping on 5 million Legos. Those are basics that will set your homeschool up for success. That's even, and those habits too, your children see you forming in yourself of that discipline is a form of their education in virtue. Next, she says, come the basics. And the basics are called that for a reason. Humanity has, she says, quote, identified certain factors without which those moments of wonder that we're seeking for our children, big reason we homeschool is we want them to have moments of wonder. But without the basics, especially as children grow older, they can't really happen, right? The basics are called the basics because they are the necessary, if insufficient, elements of a homeschool. And it's easy to ignore them when we are bombarded with that plethora of goods offered for sale by so many curriculum and the enrichment and all that. But the basics are these. They need to learn to read, they need to learn to write, and they need to learn to do math. And anything beyond that is icing on the cake. So you have Jesus Christ, you have your basic material necessities and the discipline of maintaining a home, and then you have reading, writing, and arithmetic. And then you get the mystery. And this is the moment of wonder that we're all chasing for our children. And I love this from her. She says, remember that we don't quite know how children learn, right? You have all these people telling you to, not necessarily today. This is a great homeschool conference, but you can go to conferences and they're like, this is how kids learn this, and this is how they do this. But when it comes to your individual child, each one of them, you don't really know how they learn. It's the mystery. It doesn't follow that buying the most amazing products or even having your home like resplendent with busts of philosophers, I have George Washington behind me, results in education. Reading biographies of interesting and accomplished people, as well as consulting our own experience, can help us see, remember how we had our aha moments, that learning occurs in the most random ways, sometimes with the rawest and most austere materials. I think of my 12-year-old with his sticks. He literally spends an hour a day playing Germans in the Battle of the Bulge with these sticks that he's collected. And I don't know what's going on, but I'm like, Jesus, this is my time to do laundry, so I'll let him do that. So with your own children, it could be a book. It could be that time that a priest came to dinner. It could be helping dad stack wood out back. It might be a moment even of intense suffering that we tried so hard to shield them from. It might be an encounter with a friend or another family member who has nothing to do with your homeschool plans. For all of our planning, we don't actually know when God is going to enlighten our children and give them that aha moment and awaken their minds and their hearts to Him. We can provide first things first, everything I just went through. And anything on top of that is icing on the cake. The gift of homeschooling is that our entire life of our home is a living together in anticipation of that annunciation of God, that moment of radical grace for each of our children, multiple moments of grace and conversion and learning. We provide the raw materials, we provide the basics, and God does the rest. So those are my 5 things I wish I'd known. Letter to my younger self and to my current self as I'm planning for the next school year. So here's my takeaway. You don't have to be a math whiz to get started. You don't have to recreate a Catholic school room in your living room. In fact, please don't try to do that. It is a guaranteed burnout. You don't need 7 co-ops. You don't need trilingual children or organic chalkboards made from sustainably sourced river stone or anything like that. You just need some coffee. And and actually don't get addicted to coffee. If you're not yet, like, don't go down that road. I did. It was a big mistake. Maybe that's my 6th lesson. And we really just need grace, right? We need the courage to keep going. Homeschool is not glamorous. It is 2 p.m. read alouds with the baby who's not napping on your hip. It is long division on the whiteboard, and it is a cold cup of coffee waiting for you on the counter, or something stronger, perhaps, even some days. It is messy and noble, and it is wildly inefficient at times, but it is so completely worth it. So you're not behind. I'm telling this to myself. You're not behind. You're not failing. You are building something eternal, one load of laundry, one phonics lesson at a time. And are you doing enough? Some days you are doing enough. Some days you are not doing enough. And that is okay, because enough is waiting for heaven, waiting for us in heaven. And that's where you are pointing your kids by homeschooling them. Thank you very much.
That's great, Erica. Thank you very much. Round of applause for that. It was really, really good. What's kind of funny is you're describing your homeschooling. What dawned on me was the early church. It was messy. right? It was
It
really
was Acts of
messy.
the Apostles. Yeah.
I mean, they were complete shambles. It's like, and if the church can be sustained for 2,000 years, perhaps we can survive as homeschoolers for 18 or however many years it is that we homeschool. So that was really great. Wonderful. So you guys start submitting your questions if you haven't already. There's a lot of great ones already that we've captured. So
Ooh,
let's see
great.
what we have here for you. Thank you. That was really good. All right. So this is a question from a prior talk, but I think it's you mentioned it, and so I thought it was really good to ask here. And we didn't get a chance to ask it earlier. How do I change my own feelings about school with such a negative experience that I had when growing up? I'm
Mhm.
also neurodivergent, so I'm very intimidated by teaching my own child when I was a D student.
That's a really good question, and I think, a lot of us I went to public school, I was homeschooled for 5 years, kinda in the middle. I went to public high school, I went to Catholic school for a year because I got kicked out of homeschooling. So, yeah, I
Oh wait,
get
you
it
got kicked
because
out of homeschooling?
I that's a whole 'nother story that you'll have to have me back
All
next year, and I'll tell the story.
right, that's
Okay, alright.
that's all right. We'll
But
do it. We'll have
anyway,
you back
no,
next year. All right.
I think a lot of us who grew up going through the school system experienced some kind of narrative along the lines of, you're not a good math student. You're just not good at math, or you're just not good at spelling, right? Or you're never, my parents were told in second grade that, well, she'll just never be a writer because I was really resistant to any kind of writing exercise anyone gave me. And lo and behold, now it's my profession. But I think that this sort of traditional, in the sense of institutional education in our country and in the West, has turned into, over the last 100 years or so, teaching children what to think and and evaluating us all on the same kind of method. So it puts 20 children in a classroom, and um, everyone has the same standard that they're trying to hit at the same pace, right? Every third grader has to hit these 6 marks in reading by the end of the year, or they're outside of like normal, right? Which is a ridiculous way to go about educating people, and what it teaches the kids is, except for the top, 90th percentile of kids, maybe you line up 100 third graders, 10 of them are the A students, 40 to 60 of them are in the B curve, and then you have all the other kids. You're gonna end up with most of the population thinking they're just not good readers, right? Or I'm just a B reader. When I think what homeschooling does, and this is where you can change your mindset if you were indoctrinated into that school system the way that I was. What homeschooling does is it frees the parent and the children to discover what their own trajectory is. And I'll tell you the story about my son. So and I tell this all the time, the poor kid is gonna like be labeled for life. But my first 3 were girls, and it does make a difference, and they all were, like, learning the phonics at 5 years old, they're, like, reading sentences in 1st grade, they're hitting the markers, right? They're on schedule, which for me as someone going through the school system, I'm like, "Okay, this is so easy and doable." And then I got to my son, and the boy would not learn to read. He would it was like 1st grade, 2nd grade, we start back at the beginning of sound beginnings, and halfway through 2nd grade, we get to 3rd grade, he's like 8.5 years old, and he's still sounding out these painfully tiny little words, and it just was like, Am I bad at this? Is he divergent? Is there something wrong? Should we get him tested?" And my husband and I are like, "Nope, we're just gonna trust that all these homeschoolers who are telling us to just wait and see what happens, are right." And sure enough, he had this aha moment, Christmas of his 3rd grade year, someone gave him The Magician's Nephew, and
Yeah.
he loved the cover of it, and he just opened it up, and he sat down and just started reading it in his head, and he said, "Oh, yeah, I read it, mom," and I'm like, "No, you didn't." So I start asking him to, like, summarize chapters, and sure enough, like, I still don't know, I can't explain it, and I've, since him, other kids have gone at different levels. My current, just finished 2nd grade, she's definitely outside the range of normal, but I'm not stressed about it now. So I think, like, if you're feeling like you were inculcated into this idea that education is meeting these markers on this particular schedule, I think that by diving in and just doing the homeschooling, find a tribe of homeschoolers in a community that can encourage you, and just living it could be a real healing experience for you as well, as someone who's told, "Oh, you're different. You're not good at this." Like me with the long division, like, "You're just not good at math." Um, Homeschooling isn't just like it's gonna serve your children better than any other option. If you're asking the question, "Should I homeschool?" You probably should. It's gonna serve your child really well, but you're also gonna find that you're freed from a lot of those, that conditioning that you underwent as well. I hope that was helpful.
No, I think you're spot on. So many, like our son, I wouldn't say he was slow, but I wouldn't say he was fast either. And it was interesting. I said, why don't we try to give him something that he really likes to read?
Mhm.
And I wasn't sure what it was, but we did notice he liked comic books. So I said,
Yep.
you know what? Let's try the Calvin and Hobbes. Let's try Calvin and Hobbes. And
Yep.
he read Calvin and Hobbes. And granted, there are words in there that I think it's Bill Watterson that writes Calvin and Hobbes, I think, or maybe
Yeah, I
that's
think it was Watterson did
is it
Calvin and
Watterson
Hobbes.
or yeah, I
Yep.
think so.
Yep.
Anyway, there's words in there that heck I can't define, but he's reading it, and all of a sudden trajectory went from here to like here. I mean, he just went
Yep.
up and meet. It was amazing. It's like wow, he just took off, and
Yeah, and
because he's
like, I
nuts.
don't wanna diminish that there are kids who genuinely struggle,
Sure,
but I think
absolutely.
it's a lot fewer kids than the structure of the school system would have us believe, right? Like, not reading at 6 is actually really normal. It doesn't mean they're not gonna be reading by the time they're so my dad he's a pediatrician for 45 years up in, the Dartmouth-Hitchcock system, and he had a really good friend who's a child psychiatrist, and Vince Scalise would say, he's like, "You know what? With boys especially, you could just give them a pile of sticks and send them out in the woods. You just make them do physical labor until 5th grade,
Yeah.
and then in 9 months of 5th grade, I guarantee I could catch them up with every other boy who had been stuck in a seat since kindergarten and, like, struggling through." And I never tested that. I'm not quite that bold,
Yeah.
but it gave me great comfort. It has always given me great comfort as a parent to think, our current school system is certainly not the only way. Um, and while it might have worked for some of us, it certainly didn't work for all of us. So, like, why not try something different with homeschooling?
And it makes a lot of big assumptions that everyone's the same. I think
Yeah.
that's what we're talking about, right? It's this whole
Yeah.
idea you can cater to the needs of the kid, and the worst part about being in the same environment all the time, every day,
Yeah.
8 to 5, is that there's very few opportunities to be unique. And when you
Mhm.
are unique,
Yeah.
you're now labeled in some way that's not advantageous or
Well,
whatever.
you're problematic for the teacher who has
Yeah,
to control it's understandable in a way because of the way
sure.
that it's set up, but it's not great for kids who even have a little deviation from the, approved trajectory for children,
Yeah.
yeah, be free.
Be free, Stanley, as they say in Cars. Be free. I don't know if you remember that part, but always,
I have
anytime
not
someone
seen
says be
Cars.
free, it's what
I've
comes to
not
mind.
seen Cars, believe it or
It's so
not.
funny. Anyway,
Alright, I'll
um,
check it out.
it's so funny.
Walter says it's great, yeah.
It's a great.
Alright.
All right. So, Anonymous writes, and I want to ask Anonymous to expound on this because I'm not quite sure of the question. But reading, writing, math. Writing is as in handwriting and basic
Mm,
sentence and a basic sentence, or writing as a really good essay or a research paper in junior high or high school.
sure.
So
Yeah.
this is perhaps specifically talking about something you mentioned earlier,
Mhm.
I
Yeah,
think.
so the 3 basics being reading, writing, and arithmetic, a lot of wisdom and the old adage, right? So when I mean that, I would say reading, meaning that you want to be inculcating the freedom to read for pleasure, right? And we just talked about the trajectory for that being wildly divergent some kids teach themselves to read at 4, other kids struggle to read for pleasure till they're 10, 11, 12. Um, Writing, what I mean by that, it's I'm I have always used the classical approach to that. I was trained by Laura Berquist, who wrote the Mother of Divine Grace curriculum, and I do think that she gets especially those very early years right. Writing actually begins as oral composition. So if you're reading a Bible story to your 5, 6, 7 year old, good writing is an imitation of the good ordering of great stories. And to train a child slowly to tell back to you orally at first, as they're developing their ability to write with fine motor skills. And again, that's a wildly divergent skill in terms of timing. Girls much earlier than boys. So those early years, very much oral composition. You'll if you do a classical curriculum, you'll see that you transition second, third grade. Mom will write out 2 or 3 sentences that are summarizing the story or the science, like you do a science chapter or something, and the child copies them as their stamina allows. You want to challenge them without crushing them on the handwriting. Always an interesting balance that you have to discern child to child. And then, yeah, I introduce paragraphing depending on my children. So I've had 4 reach this stage at 5, sorry, 5 reach this stage at this point. A good paragraph would be like a 4th, 5th, 6th grade skill. And then 6th, 7th, 8th grade is when I start having them stack paragraphs for me. That's the way the Mother of Divine Grace curriculum does it. Classical Academic Press has been really good for me in 7th and 8th grade in terms of if you just want training in classical writing for your kids. Memoria Press has also been really good. They're a little more advanced at an early age, I would say, in terms of the demands on the child. But those are that's sort of my progression leading up through 8th grade. And then in high school, that's when we sort of I let the floodgates loose, and we're doing more intensive essays more regularly with like introduction, paragraphs, conclusion. In 10th grade, I introduce citations, academic citation, and then I hold them to it pretty strictly. I was in graduate school myself, and so like I had a lot of training in that, the importance of citation. So in my homeschool, that's something I try to pass on to the kids, but not till 10th, 11th, 12th grade.
Yeah.
I hope that helps.
Yeah, I think it's a great answer. And so let me ask you this question because it sounds like you're in favor because I love them myself, but audiobooks. Someone was asking
Mm,
or mentioning that audiobooks are something that their kids love,
yeah.
particularly magician's nephew.
Mhm.
What do you think about audiobooks?
Yeah, no, audiobooks have been, I mean, it's been, I've been homeschooling over 2 decades almost now, and that's something that is a tool I didn't have as many of back in the early days. Like, you had to really buy them and, like, look for them, and now they're so available. I do love audiobooks, especially for children who are later in reading. So my son, who was not reading, was definitely, we had him listening to some classics. I uh, I do try to wean them off of the audiobooks, once I can see that they can read for pleasure, just because I do like their hands being on paper books. I call me old school, but I think that the ability to read silently to yourself. There's a great passage in the Confessions of Saint Augustine where he walks in on Ambrose of Milan, and he was astonished because Ambrose was sitting with a book and there were no sounds coming out of him. And this is because reading silently to yourself was kind of this new thing. And Augustine was astonished at this and started doing it himself, and talks about how that changed how he read in contemplation and all that. So I do want my children to also learn the skill of reading. Obviously, if you struggle with a dyslexia or any of the text to translation in your head, then any of those learning challenges, then audiobooks continue to be a great option for you throughout your life. So again, it's very child specific, but I do love the audiobooks, especially for long road trips.
Yeah, yeah. And someone's asking about you to use audiobooks as a means to learn cadence and inflection.
Hmm.
So yeah,
Yeah,
that's a good one.
yeah. Find really good readers. They're one of my absolute favorite audiobooks of all time. The BBC did a production of all the Winnie the Pooh stories, and it stars Judi Dench and Stephen Fry. And Stephen Fry is crazy. Like, I wouldn't recommend his morals at all, but in terms of reading the English language,
Mhm.
bar none, such a great recording. So, highly
Really?
recommend Winnie the Pooh. It's great for the whole
Yeah,
family.
who knew? When sorry, didn't make that a rhyme. But one of the things we loved, speaking of audio elements, and this isn't
Mhm.
something that it's not necessarily a book, but if you ever listen to Adventures in Odyssey,
Mhm.
which was it's a production of yes, the help me here, Focus on the Family. Thank you. Focus on the
Mhm.
Family. And their dramatizations
Mhm.
that they're Christian, not Catholic, but Christian. I've only heard one out of over 1,000 that they've had that draw into question some theology, very little, and
Mhm.
it's only for a few minutes. But generally speaking, they're very consistent with the church, primarily because the writers, at least I know one of them very, very, he's a good friend,
Mhm.
was Catholic, or I mean, he became Catholic. So his identity was already Catholic when he was writing.
Oh,
He
beautiful.
became formally Catholic when he
Nice.
yeah. So anyway, and now he's writing for the Augustine Institute. By the way, they're
Oh,
starting a
awesome.
production called Hope Springs that'll be launched, I think, later this year. I want to say so. It'll be the equivalent. But anyway, great series. I love the Adventures in Odyssey series.
Oh,
It's
great recommendation, yeah.
yeah, it's great for young kids, especially on car trips. Instead of putting them in front of a TV or something like that.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great note there. It's just audiobooks and listening to the words spoken aloud
Yeah.
is leagues better than putting them in front of a screen, and
Oh
often
yeah.
has the same effect of giving mom, like, 10 minutes to make dinner. So, I think, like, if the fact that we have that option, especially as Catholic parents, and
Yeah.
we're very interested in staying off screens for all kinds of developmental reasons, yeah, absolutely, like, do audiobooks, not screens, so, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mhm.
All right. So let's see. We got some other questions here. So let me see here.
Oh, yeah, tan books. Someone in the chat just said,
Yeah.
yeah, the history of civilization, story of the Bible, story of
Yep.
civilization, all of those really, really great options. My kids
Yeah.
love those.
Philip Campbell, History of
Yep.
Civilization,
That guy is
the
so
story of
prolific.
civilization.
Yeah,
Yeah.
stories, yes.
He teaches for us.
Oh, well,
So
that's
Philip
good.
Campbell teaches for
So
us. So
sign up for Homeschool Connections,
yeah,
everyone.
yeah, yeah. He's a great teacher, and you can take a live class with him. And the kids, he's like a fan favorite. So there's all sorts of activity in the cafe about like making him an adopted father or something like that. It's crazy.
That's awesome.
Anyway, but all right. So here's another question. You mentioned doing a 2-day hybrid. I think you mentioned this.
Yeah.
We're currently doing a Christian 2-day hybrid, but I desire to do a Catholic curriculum. I love the
Mm.
social aspect and support the hybrid gives. I'm torn. Do you have any advice?
Mm. Yeah, I mean, so much of that depends on where you live and what your options are.
Mhm.
I know a lot of people don't live within driving distance of a Catholic option, and then you're asking, well, is it better to be at home or is it better to have the interaction in the Christian academy? This is this is such I'm not copping out here, I promise, but like this is a super individual discernment process. But I think, if you have the option to found, to help start, if you have that bandwidth and a team of other Catholic families that you trust, it is worth it to start, even if starting small. Um, and it can be hard to, like, take leave of your Protestant friends and, like, explain to them. It can be some of them might not understand, but I do believe that building something specifically Catholic, for your area, if it's not already there, would be like a tertiary vocation from God, and having your children around other Catholic kids, especially during those really early formative years when you can add Latin into the curriculum, although some Protestants are starting to do that as well.
Yeah,
If you look at the Memoria Press classes, it's
yeah,
it's run mostly by Catholics, but there are a lot of Protestants who come through that program and they're learning Latin, Greek as well. But of course, like history from a Catholic perspective is very different, especially once you hit about 15, 17, right? So I think having that option, or if it's not in your area, building that option if you're able to, would be ideal. That being said, if that is not an option for you currently and you have a good support system with a Christian school that's helping you a lot, you can always supplement outside of that with Catholic materials. And I will say too, a couple of my children have thrived in non-Catholic environments because they have this sort of contrarian, choleric temperament where just being in a Catholic bubble to them was actually not conducive to growth in their faith as much. So, for example, my oldest daughter's at Hillsdale College, and people are like, "Oh, it's
Yay.
not a cat." I know, right? Yay! But they're like, "Oh, it's not a Catholic school," blah blah blah. But for her, it's actually really like catalyzed spiritual growth because she's arguing for the faith and she's been forced to really examine herself and say, "Why do I believe what I believe?" So it also depends on the temperament of your children. Like I said, I'm not trying to cop out on this, but the grace to make that decision is going to be there for you. I would definitely talk to a priest about it that you trust, and your local community of Catholic homeschoolers. Maybe there's other Catholics in the Christian school who also, feel the tug and are feeling that same discernment call. And you could discern with them, like go out for coffee and or dinner with the dads and say, "We're thinking about this."
Yeah, and I would offer for those that are in that same situation. One of the things is on these online resources, online communities, a lot
Mhm.
of times you can find out. Like we have one in our at Homeschool Connections where we have about 2,900 parents or whatever in there now. But it'll tell you if they offer it, it'll tell you where they're located, so you can find
Mhm.
someone in your area that you can collaborate with, commensurate with, and bounce ideas off of. Meet even maybe it's 50 miles away, but you meet halfway or whatever. So there's a lot of options out there. I would argue that
Yeah.
you're not limited to just what you know. There are plenty of resources out there, in particular these online communities that will label or have drive you to a particular spot nearby
Mhm.
that
A
has,
locality, right?
yeah, yeah. So, all right. So let's see here. Another question came in. So any tips for homeschooling only one child, especially in
Oh,
elementary years? So, you're fine
yeah.
solo, you're one person. Actually, this is kind of cool because I mean, you can do a lot, you know,
Yeah.
but I'll let Erica answer her
All
question.
right.
Question for
Yeah,
you.
no, we have several friends who are homeschooling only children, and, eventually I'll be homeschooling an only child because our baby is like a six-year caboose, so I'm kind of looking forward to this myself. But, yeah, I would say that the what you'll need to be intentional about, so what I have to be intentional about with 7 kids is making sure each child has individual study time. What you will have to be intentional about as a parent of an only child is making sure that they have community in which to grow up in the faith. So it's like a flip side of the same coin. For only children, I do think, looking for a local Catholic co-op, get out of the house once a day, um, even getting to daily mass is for many singleton parents easier than for parents of many children. Not to say it's easy, but it's easier. So even making that commitment, because socialization isn't just like, oh, I'm going to go find a class of all these other 6-year-olds, right? It's also, being present to your parish and being present to your priest and the old ladies who go to mass during the week. So getting out of the house in an intentional way is a big one. Um, I would say to get a curriculum that is is mom intensive for limited times during the day. And an example of this would be Mother of Divine Grace for me, which is the one I'm most familiar with in the early years. So kindergarten, for example, 45 minutes, 4 days a week. If you have one child and that's the only child, you could even bump that up to 90 minutes, right? Um, and then you're done with the formal schooling. So the child's not like intensely one-on-one with you for the whole like a school day, right? It's like 90 minutes. We have this, maybe split it up 45 in the morning, 45 in the afternoon. Um, and then spread it out today so the child has like alone playtime while you're doing schoolwork, and then you have like a structured social time as well. I would, in the early years, especially, you'll be able to integrate the child into more of your work at home, in the home as well. So teaching them a routine around lunchtime, etc.
Yeah.
But anyway, that would be those would be my sort of pointers for the only child at home. If you do have a community or a hybrid or a co-op situation, definitely sign up for that.
Yeah. That's great tips. Jessica's asking, it sounds like this is she's asking for a life raft. she's
Oh,
she,
Jessica.
yeah, she said she needs help balancing 12 kids. One is in seminary, a minor seminary, and one is in college. So
Congrats.
it sounds
Okay.
like 10 are at home.
Down to 10. All right.
Yep. So yeah, we're down to 10. If I knew my math right, 12 minus
Mhm.
2. Yeah. Kids at home range between 15 years and 9 months.
Yeah.
So my first and second graders are great readers. My fourth is not very good reader. So or not at
Uh,
all, is what she says. So
okay.
what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I don't know how long you've been homeschooling or if like you're just getting into it. Um, I would definitely take a pause and see what you can combine. So in terms of subjects, so if you have two kids who are like 15 or 18 months apart, and there is a way that you can combine them for what I'd call the extras, like the history, the science, and you can sort of like pair up your children along the way. That would be ideal for you, so you're not managing as much. I with the moms of lots and lots of kids, and I worked for Regina Chaley Academy, which you might have heard of, um, for many years consulting. And the moms with lots of kids, that sort of zone defense planning was absolutely crucial. I don't know what your resources are either, but for the older children especially, I would say, don't be afraid to tap into online support for them. Some people are very anti internet classes, and I was too for many, many years. But I would say like Memoria and Colby and Mother of Divine Grace have really good options, and they're very good. It's not perfect, but they're good about maintaining like good guardrails on the chat and everything. So definitely get help for those older kids so that you become more of a manager with them than the primary teacher. And I'm sorry if you've already thought of all these things and this is getting frustrating. If you have strong readers with the younger set, I would say just like take a year. You said, was it first and second grade? You said, Walter, who are good
Yeah,
readers?
our first and second graders are the good readers.
Okay,
Our
great.
fourth grade is not quite there yet. So
Awesome. I would just take next year with your first and second grader, and you're just going to do basics. Like, just keep going with the reading a little bit and do like just read books to them and play audiobooks to them. Keep going with math because that's cumulative. Do not add in anything else, and just take next year to focus on the fourth grader there in the middle. There is nothing that they can't catch up on, right? Like, you might look at the list of books like at the TAN curriculum or Memoria for second grade, and you're like, but what if they never read Charlotte's Web? They will read Charlotte's Web. My husband never read Charlotte's Web till he had children, and now he's read it at least 3 times. So
yeah.
don't feel beholden to like those younger kids. And it's not like you're sacrificing them. It's just that you're giving them a year of space so that you can have a year of grace with the kids who are struggling. Um, and set a reminder to yourself a year from now to like get back on the wagon with kids that maybe you let them go for a year. But again, just the basics, anything that's cumulative, keep it going, but give yourself a year off. Gosh, you got 10 kids at home, for heaven's sake, and a 9-month-old.
Yeah.
Maybe the
And
first and second grader can just like, toddle around after the 9, 10, 11, 12-month-old for the fall.
yeah, I mean,
I've done that.
reading is so vital because it's the benchmark skill that lets them do other things, right? Except
Yeah.
for maybe math, but even word problems are so critical, right?
Mhm.
But
Mhm.
again, it is the beauty of homeschooling because I've seen so many kids, they're late bloomers, but then they just take off. I mean,
Mhm.
Maureen Whitman, who's my business partner, talks about her son who is severely dyslexic and still is, by the way,
Wow.
but he's a great writer. He got a 34 on the ACT.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, I mean that's like
Yeah.
almost perfect. And he now is an author himself. He's authored his own children's books, and he's a what are the registered nurse, a RNA or whatever.
Mhm.
He's above that even. So I mean he's quite skilled, and the guy is nothing less than impressive. So it's
Mhm.
just but he started out like it took him a long time to get to a point where he was reading at a level that his peers were, and then he
Yeah.
went past them. You know what I mean? And so,
Mhm.
so I mean, everyone's got their own style, everyone's got their own pace, but if you love them and you love them where they're at, most of the time, that is, I think that's the thing we tend to we tend to dismiss too quickly,
Mhm.
because one of the things that probably works against traditional schools in general is the classroom management aspects that burdens the teachers
Mhm.
from putting their love into the kids, their teaching into the
Right.
kids. They're so
Mhm.
preoccupied with everything that has nothing to do with content. And so that helps them, it hurts their ability to pass on their enthusiasm, their love.
Yeah, we see so much burnout, yeah, and
Yeah, I
they've
mean,
they've added this element of being the social workers and the therapists as well, and as parents in the home, we already are the social workers and the therapists and everything, so it's, uh, it's just adding on the extra, but yeah, that's that's what I would
it's
say.
been wonderful. This has been wonderful, Erica. Thank you so much for your time. Do you,
Yeah.
before I call this to a close, do you want to give them any kind of last minute thoughts before we call your talk to a close and ultimately the conference?
Sure. Yeah, I would just encourage everyone who is on and maybe considering homeschooling, and you've never tried it before, to just jump right in. The water's great, and there are so many supports now. For anyone on the call who is like on their last gasp, and they're like, "I cannot do this for another year." Keep your kids out of school, please, and just take the fall to, like, just do reading and math, like, just take some time, the time that you need to get back on the wagon and find support that will help you to continue the good work you've started. But thank you so much for having me, and it's been a pleasure.
And ours as well. And by the way, support the Catholic Loop. Goodness, they're doing some great work over there. Brian Burgess, it's Brian Burgess, right? I'm saying that right?
Birch, Brian Birch, like the
Birch.
tree.
That's
Mhm.
right, Birch. Yeah, he's a UD grad, as I
Yeah.
understand it, and yep. And in fact, I know one of his friends, his classmates, as a matter of
Oh,
fact.
that's awesome. Well,
Yeah, but
pray for him. He's nominated for ambassador to the Holy See, and we've had some obstruction from the Democratic Party. So if you could all pray for that nomination to go through quickly, we would appreciate it here at Catholic Vote.
they're just delaying the inevitable because he's great. So yeah, check out the Catholic Vote. Subscribe to their podcast. They are fantastic. It's always really good to hear you, Erica, and the team. You guys are great. It was listening to you. I'm like, oh, we should have Erica on, and so that was the epiphany I had.
Well,
So
it was great to put on my homeschooling hat for a change and like
yeah,
get out of the politics and religion for not the religion, but the politics anyway for an
for sure,
afternoon.
for
Yeah.
sure. Well, we really appreciate you taking the time to be with us this afternoon. I'm glad you got home safely, despite all the technical problems your flight had. But I would just invite everyone to, again, follow all of our sponsors, our vendors that were introduced in the talks and before the talks. Congratulations to all those that won those prizes. Take advantage of the coupons and discounts that were also awarded to everybody in the event that you did not win. Everyone still is a winner. And yeah, be advocates for each other and for the people that are here, because it's through advocating for each other that makes conferences like these and the things that help us become better Catholic homeschoolers possible, right? So it's really, really important. So thank you again, Erica. We really appreciate the time. Thank you, everyone else, for showing up. I really appreciate it. It's been wonderful.